Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talking with Dr. T, conversations on bridging the gap between faith and mental health. I'm excited for our episode tonight. However, I just want to mention I hope you've had a chance to watch the first two episodes of this season. August, we had Dr. Jeff Dennis, and in September, we had Dr. Cyrus Williams, and I am just excited about our guests that we have had so far. This month's Talking with Dr. T will focus on healing and thriving after domestic violence and faith communities. Tonight's discussion will focus on unique challenges faced by Black women survivors of domestic violence, the critical role of faith and ministry in their healing journeys, and how faith communities can better support those in need. Insights from our guest tonight, Dr. Shanita Brown, and her new book, Healing and Thriving After Domestic Violence, a practical guide for Black women, will provide a framework for understanding the complexities faced by Black women survivors. My guest tonight, Dr. Shanita Brown, who is my mentee, my friend, my sister, my colleague. She's a dynamic speaker, a counselor, educator, and licensed trauma therapist. She is dedicated for transforming conversations surrounding intimate partner violence, with particular focus on the intersectionalities experience of Black women and mental health wellness. With over 15 years of experience in the clinical mental health field, she brings a wealth of expertise to her roles as counselor, educator, consultant, and trainer. Dr. Brown's commitment to breaking the silence on intimate partner violence and promoting mental health wellness is evident in her multifaceted work. Through her platform, she strives to raise awareness through education, empowerment, and inspiration. She has extensive services that includes work with the North Carolina Domestic Violence Commission Task Force, Safe Space Agency, and most recently served on the board of directors for the North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And I am just honored to say that she is the president of the North Carolina Counselors Association. So welcome, Dr. Shanita Brown, to Talking with Dr. T once again.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Tinsley. It's an honor and privilege and always good to be here with you.
Absolutely. You were a guest during my inaugural season, and it was when we started the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I still think that this topic is very important.
Absolutely.
It was important then during the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's also important today.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your attentiveness to this and being very intentional about raising awareness. And for me, it's 365 days a week because every 9 seconds a woman is assaulted. And so we can't do enough regarding domestic violence awareness. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you are absolutely right. This is something we need to focus on 365 days a year. I want to bring particular focus this month because October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. Well, let's kind of jump in, but let's start off. I kind of read your bio, but can you give our listening audience a little bit more detail about your professional journey, your ministry background, just to give a clear picture of who you are?
Hi. That's always a hard question, a hard thing to do. Like, how much do you share? I would say I'm starting out that I am a thriving survivor, and I'm proud of the journey that I have endured. I have not been able to say that. And so I'm grateful for the healing that has taken place in my life to be able to say that the past is behind me and the journey is now being able to inform, educate, and empower the community about how domestic violence shows up for Black women. I've been in the field for over 20 years and serving in various capacities. I've been a team lead, intensive in-home team lead, serve as a private practice. I have my own private practice. Director of counseling services at a HBCU and also a counselor educator. I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to train the next set of diverse counselors. I have been working with survivors probably all my life and did not know that. The more I learned about domestic violence, the more I began to see, wow, this thing is just so large, and it shows up in all of our settings. As far as ministry, I help churches create domestic violence ministries, and I was able to do that at my church in Raleigh. And so this is the work. It is not easy, but I'm grateful for who God has placed in my life to do this work with. And so I'm just excited to talk to you about it. I'm excited to always raise awareness. And I just want people to know there is life after abuse. It's one part of your story. It's not all of you.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it. And I just want people to kind of hear it. I'm going to say it for those in the back. She helps churches with education and awareness and bridging the gap between faith and mental wellness, as well as domestic violence. I came down to Raleigh last year, and you were at a church well, you were on a panel, but it was a discussion on domestic violence. But what I appreciated, people want to hear this. The church was packed with people,
Yes.
at this conference. So what is the stigma that people might have about hearing this information and talking about this topic?
Well, for one, is that it's such a taboo subject, right? And it was like, it doesn't happen to me, or we don't know enough about it. You know, what happens in your family, we're going to just keep it in the family. And so it is a real huge thing. It's a great thing that when you see a faith community, a church having a conference, a workshop on mental health first, but then you add domestic violence and sexual assault. I mean, that in itself is helping and speaking directly to survivors that we see you, you are not alone, and we're trying to learn more about it so we can better help you in this journey, because it impacts every aspect of our lives. It impacts us, especially spiritually, and how we view God after experiencing abuse. And so it really breaks the stigma, right? It breaks the stigma that, you know, I can talk about this. There are people in my faith community that see me. I've never shared it with my family members, but now I have a church family that is going to offer a workshop, or being willing and open to train leaders is huge. It's breaking and opening doors.
Absolutely. And what I appreciate, we met, it might be 15 years ago, right? As part of a conference down in North Carolina. And this has been your passion. This has been your topic area. And I have just been honored to watch you grow and flourish.
Thank you.
Yes. And with the fact that you have a new book, this has been in the works. The book title is Healing and Thriving After Domestic Violence, a Practical Guide for Black Women. So congratulations on your new book.
Thank you. Thank you.
So can you tell our listening audience a little bit more about the book, the overview, and we talked about maybe reading a snippet of your book as well.
Yeah, so it still hadn't hit me yet that I have a book. It took me 5 years to write it, and I started during the pandemic. I started writing this book when I was in Richmond. And so the book is a guide. It offers culturally insights, evidence-based practices, topics such as understanding domestic violence trauma, the complexities of Black women. It's so important for people to understand what domestic violence looks like for Black women survivors, the role of faith and spirituality. I could not do this book without including a chapter on how significant spirituality and the role of faith plays for Black women survivors, mostly Black women, not all women, but mostly Black women. That came from my research as well. I wanted to examine the role of the Black church, the role of pastors, and how that impacts women leaving in abusive relationships. It also highlights the importance of community, how to find your community. Many people don't understand domestic violence is so complex. They don't understand how to help survivors. So it's important for survivors to understand, how do you find your community? Also understanding red flags, understanding what healing and thriving looks like, right? And so I wanted survivors to see themselves in this book. It also includes my research. It also includes my story. It includes snippets of my story because when I started writing this book, I was not going to include my story. I still was not identifying myself as a survivor. But the more I wrote, the more I began to peel back the layers that this is me. And, you know, God gave me the courage to be able to share things that I had never shared with anyone, especially my family. So it was really therapeutic for me. And so that's what the book is. It's a catalyst for change, for hope that you are not alone and that there is definitely life after abuse.
Yes, and I appreciate, I remember when you told me you were starting to write the book, and just sharing pieces of you and sharing your story and telling your story to help someone else, right? Would you like to read the abstract for your book?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, sure. Let's With a focus on holistic well-being and vulnerability, Dr. Brown reminds survivors that they are not alone. This book offers guidance on a range of topics such as understanding domestic violence trauma, the significance of faith and spirituality, and vitality of various support and community. Whether you are seeking to understand your experiences, find support, or take actionable steps towards healing, this book is an invaluable companion on your journey. The book will empower and equip survivors to thrive beyond abuse, as well as a tool for lay people and clinicians to support Black women survivors. And it was important because domestic violence isn't a topic when I think of training clinicians. And I'm often asked, or I'm often people reach out to consult with me. I have this client experiencing DV, what direction do I take? That is really important. One, I'm glad they're doing that. This book is a resource. Why? Because this topic isn't it isn't a mandatory, it isn't a core course in counselor education programs, right? Mm-hmm. So we know trauma shows up in all of our settings when we think about training our students and how well prepared are they, right? So you see more courses, more programs now that offer trauma and crisis, but it may be some courses, some programs may offer an elective such as gender studies or trauma and crisis, such as a course that I created in my program where I have the flexibility to talk about domestic violence. So students in my program now have some of the basic tenets of understanding DV. It shows up in school, college, and definitely clinical mental health counseling. And so this is where I wanted clinicians to be able to say, I have a resource for myself, but also for my clients.
Yes, thank you. And this is a resource for faith leaders as well.
Absolutely, yes.
So how do we get this topic, just like we are fusing different topics in our counselor education programs, how can we get, and this is for our deans that are listening from various seminaries, our faculty, how do we get this topic weaved into the pastoral care and counseling courses as part of various seminaries?
Well, that's a great question as I prepare to go to a counseling conference. And that's one of the things I'm going to be doing, hopefully to connect with program directors and counselor educators. How can I get this topic? Just broach the conversation, just ask, right? Just ask. This isn't a topic that you see in divinity programs. Some programs are, what's the word? I don't want to say the word. I'm trying this on the tip of my tongue. Some programs are progressive, right? And some are still very conservative. So, having the conversation, what do you think about having a speaker, right? Just can you bring a speaker in to talk about domestic violence and what that looks like from a faith-based perspective in my role as a faith leader? Because we know that survivors are turning, I would say Black women, in the context of Black women, they are turning to their faith leaders first before they're coming to a counselor.
Yes.
Right. And so they're looking for guidance. How do I navigate my marriage? How do I navigate this relationship? Pastor, give me some guidance. Tell me what to do. I'm not really sure what to do. I don't want to leave my husband. I don't want to lead in my marriage. And so leaders aren't trained. They aren't prepared. It is more than just pray about it.
Yeah, that's right. You are absolutely right.
So having it takes someone to have the courage, as I did, ask my director, can we bring in a speaker? Or what if we just create a course as a trial and see what happens, see what interest we get from my students?
Yep. I love it. Have the courage, take a risk, and introduce a topic that is not a normal topic on the books. Have a special topics and bring it in. I think it's really important what you said too. Domestic violence is a world issue, right? It doesn't stop global. It does not stop at the doors of the mortar brick walls of the church, the virtual church, right? So how would you respond to a listening audience who say, well, you're focused on Black women. talk about the diversity, the multicultural and social justice aspect. It's not just Black women, but it's women of all races.
Women of all ethnicities.
Yeah.
Listeners, it is women of all ethnicities. I chose to focus on Black women. I am a Black woman survivor. I chose to focus my book, and that was part of my journey in writing this book, Dr. Tinsley. I started out with a topic, Free Not Broken, 10 Keys to Healing from Domestic Violence, and I wanted it for all survivors. And I began to say, I've worked with all survivors, right? I have held workshops. I have facilitated conversations with faith leaders of all ethnicities, of genders, men and women, of all religion, and saying, I've been ridiculed for telling someone to leave a marriage, right?
Right.
And so I would say that have the training, make sure your leaders are prepared, but knowing that it is across the board. Black women experience it more than other ethnicities, but nobody is exempt.
Yes. Ooh, say it again. Nobody
is exempt.
Even men. There is a news report from last week that I heard, and it's happened. The statistics, we'll talk about that, but even men are victims of domestic violence. Is that right?
Absolutely. I've worked with male survivors, and it was very hard for them to identify that I'm experiencing abuse, right? Especially because the way men are socialized.
Yeah.
And he was like, this can't be happening to me. And when I began to explain to him about abuse and what it looks like and validating his experiences, he was like, yeah, this is happening to me.
And that's a good point. And I do want to point out the statistics, the national statistics say 1 in 3 men are victims of domestic violence. And that's those who report it.
Those
1 in 3 men. So if you're sitting in your congregation, you can say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Right? Yeah.
Well, let's help our listening audience understand what is domestic violence. You talk about it in your book as well.
Yeah. Domestic violence is a pattern of controlling behavior. It's the pattern of controlling behavior when one partner tries to maintain power and control over another partner. And so the key thing, listeners, is the pattern of control and power, right? It's the controlling behavior. And so that can look like isolation, manipulation, spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse. And it's a pattern of tactics that one partner is using to maintain power and control of another partner. And it can go on for years.
Yep. Power and control. And I think
the whole concept is that I want to maintain power and control. Okay, so when you get paid, you bring your check to me, or you go cash it and you bring all your money to me and I give you an allowance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Or you don't have any access to your money.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the bills or
the bills at all. Or you don't know who's paying what. You don't know what is getting done. And I find that financial abuse, just as spiritual abuse, is one that people don't really consider that much. And it makes it very difficult for survivors to leave when they don't know that, how do I start my life? Or you want me to consider leaving, and I've never had any say in how I manage bills. So that's very scary for me now, to step out or to raise my kids. And now I got to figure out finances too. When all my life, my husband or my partner has controlled my finances, I think it's better off for me to stay.
Yeah.
Financial abuse is a reason why survivors stay.
Well, you talk about financial abuse, but you also talk about spiritual abuse in your book. So can you explain how faith and religious teachings can sometimes be manipulated to control victims?
Yeah, such as scriptures, and when faith leaders will pick and choose certain scriptures to keep survivors. Well, let's start with abusers, right? When they would use, because the tactic is using a scripture to maintain power and control. So if you are in a situation right now, let me speak to you. If you are in a relationship and you have heard God hates divorce, you can't leave me because the scripture says God hates divorce. That is a form of spiritual abuse. They are using the scripture to manipulate a survivor to stay in the marriage.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's the tactic. They're using biblical scriptures. They're using things such as, I've worked with survivors and they have shared that I wanted to go to Bible study, or I wanted to go to choir practice and I wasn't able to go. Why? He kept the car, or he couldn't do this, or I practiced a different religion and he manipulated me. So I wanted to go to my childhood church and I couldn't do that because he said, you're only going to go to church on Sunday with me, and this is the church that you're going to.
Okay. Manipulation, power, and control.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
You're only going to go to church with me on this Sunday to this church, and you can't go to your child home church. You can't go to support a women's conference. You can't do anything. You can only go to church with me on this particular Sunday and this church only.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's using scriptures and texts and various forms to maintain power and control, using their faith, their spiritual identity to maintain power and control. And it's also when faith leaders use their position as well.
Yeah. So this can hinder a survivor's or a victim's decision to seek help or to leave an abusive relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely to leave. I have worked with survivors, and I have asked, she said, well, I'm going to talk to my pastor. And I said, well, tell me more about that. What are you looking for? What are you hoping to happen when you set up this meeting and have a conversation with your pastor? She said, I want him to tell him he's wrong. And I said, well, let's talk more about that. What have you heard your pastor say and preach? That's my job, right? It's not my job as a counselor to say, don't go. It's my job to explore your decision, and let's talk about that. She said, I want him to tell my husband he is wrong. And I said, okay, let's talk about, what are you hearing your pastor say? It's so important. And I talk about that. I provide questions for survivors and for people, even for faith leaders. When you read this chapter 4, for you to consider, am I doing this? Am I creating a safe sanctuary for my members? Do I talk about abuse, or do I call it out and say this is wrong? Right? And so we talked about it, and I said, so I'm not telling you not to go, just to be mindful if you're not hearing things that are supportive of women in the church. It's important to know that it's possible you may get re-victimized, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Chapter
4 needed to pray more. She was told she needed to dress, she needed to cook more, she needed to do all these things, and never held her husband accountable. And eventually she left.
Yeah. Chapter 4, we've come this far by faith. And that's what chapter 4 is about. So how can faith leaders, how can victims and survivors reconnect with their faith in ways that empower them and support them on their healing journeys?
They will have to reconnect with their with scriptures, and that means sometimes sacred texts that focus on liberation and hope and optimism and strength, and encouragement and empowerment. It looks like reconnecting with faith communities outside of your current faith community, being aware that you may have to do some things differently, re-examining your relationship with Christ. Because in my research study, faith and spirituality served as a positive coping strategy. It also empowered them to leave the abusive relationship. So one of the strategies would be looking at, and just using prayer, meditation, and asking God for clarity on how to navigate. And they all share that, that gave them the courage to leave. It was their relationship. It wasn't their pastor, it was their relationship. So when you think about reconnecting and thinking about using faith and spirituality, sometimes reconnecting with your relationship with Christ, but also reconnecting with yourself. And that would be looking at scriptures in forms of empowerment and hope, liberation to give you the strength to move forward to freedom.
Wow, you're talking about that relationship with the Lord, but you also have a chapter called A Tribe Called Support. So let's talk about, what is that tribe called support?
Yeah, wow. That tribe looks like your family and your friends. It looks like counselors. It looks like faith leaders. It may look like sorority sisters. It may look like other colleagues who are non-judgmental. Look for people who are non-judgmental, who will support you and say, I may not understand what you're experiencing, but I'm here to support you. I can take your kids, or let's just go out to eat. Let's just go for a walk. People who are just going to allow you to be you on your healing journey, because you're trying to figure out who you are. So the last thing a survivor needs is a person trying to tell them what to do, because they've already been or they could be still in that abusive relationship. So when family and friends are approaching people, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to call this person, you need to call 911, or you need to go to your church. That can seem very overwhelming, and it would most likely shut down, and you will not be in that core circle of the tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing we want is for somebody to feel overwhelmed and shut
Yeah.
down, right?
Mm.
So speak to somebody who may be listening tonight saying, I need help. What should I do? What are techniques? Because we talked about this during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially when we talk about nobody could go out to work, we were staying at home, right?
Yeah.
So what are some strategies for help-seeking strategies for somebody who may be listening, or that tribe called support? I have a family member or a friend. What are some strategies?
Well, it's going to be important to look at safety first,
Mhm.
right? And so, how safe are you? If you're not feeling safe, being attuned to your body, if you're at that point that you can really check in with yourself, I can acknowledge that I was checked out. So, I didn't really know what I was doing, who I was telling. There were things that I didn't remember that I'm later finding out now. And so, it's going to be really important to figure out those things that can bring you some calmness. If you have the capability to go for a walk, then go for a walk. We have a chance to whisper a few prayers, maybe do that. And having somebody on a standby or setting up a code word. There may be people that are listening right now that are thinking, I want to leave, I'm not sure how. So I don't recommend just to abruptly leave, but connecting to an advocate with a DV agency, or calling the DV hotline and setting up a safety plan. That would be immediately, right? If someone is listening thinking, she's speaking to me and I'm not sure, but I want to leave this, don't leave abruptly, because it can be very fatal.
Yeah.
That's one of the words. That's one of the most dangerous times for a survivor, when she's trying to leave, because now your partner recognizes you want to regain your freedom and your power and your voice, and they don't want that. And unfortunately, survivors do end their lives. That they lose their lives by trying to leave an abusive relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I text you, was it last week, 2 weeks ago? I'm from Minnesota, and I text you about that situation that just
Yeah.
happened where a victim lost her life
Mhm.
just a few hours after she posted something on Facebook.
Mhm.
And when I say few hours, it was just a few hours. So I
Yeah.
really do believe that we got to make sure we educate the tribe called
Mhm.
support. It's
Mhm.
not abruptly, that
That's not
and that there is a plan, right?
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
you're not
you want to have a safety plan, and the DV hotline offers a safety plan. If you don't feel safe, if you're thinking they may be tracking your with technology, and checking your IP addresses, or going to a library, or doing it somewhere where you feel comfortable to engage in that interactive tool on their website. It becomes very real when you start to engage in a safety plan. Develop code words for your children if you have children. Packing your essential items: birth certificate, driver's license, passport. A getaway bag or overnight bag in your car, or if you feel that they may go in your car, or have it
Yeah.
at someone's house, a trusted friend's house. This is the bag. If you know what to do when I text you the code word, this is what you do. So it has to
Yeah.
be thought out. But intermediate, if you're not ready to leave, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's
Right.
okay.
Right.
It is, leaving an abusive relationship is a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me, because a lot of times we don't identify, because of stigma, and we don't identify that you're experiencing abuse. So
Yeah.
don't feel bad if you're listening and saying, I'm not really ready to leave, and that's okay. Leaving is your choice. It has to be your choice. But when you decide to leave, it definitely needs to be thought out and planned, and safety is paramount.
Absolutely. So I want to say a couple things, and we're going to have it flashing across the screen. The domestic violence helpline. It is hotline 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. You can also text the word START, START, to 88788. And so I just want you all to have the domestic violence. I also believe that as part of the process, a victim has to educate themselves. They have to become more self-aware that this is really happening to them, right? Whether it's a male or female, a Black woman, right? So again, what are those red flags that you were talking about earlier? Let's reiterate the flags,
Yes, definitely.
reiterate what it may look like for a person under power and control.
Yes, and that's definitely what chapter 1 is about. What is domestic violence? Understanding domestic violence. I believe that's the
Yeah.
title of it. But it's so important to understand domestic violence, and that the whole concept, the core of it, is power and control. And one of the key things I would say is, even counselors who are listening, if a client comes in, and no client comes in saying, I want to leave this relationship, right? And we ask those intro questions in our assessment, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
That is an indicator that someone is on pins and needles. They're very, very hyper vigilant, control. They can't go a lot of places by themselves. They have to always check in. And let's checking in, meaning that if you share that you are somewhere, I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriends or my guys, and then I'll be back. And that repetitive calling every 10 minutes. What are you doing now? Send me a picture. Like, I mean, that's a bit much when you've already shared that what you're doing and you be back. And if I'm not back by this time, I check in with you later. But if someone is calling you every 10 minutes while you are out with your friends, that is a red flag. Someone who does not respect your boundaries is a red flag. Someone who is very jealous, name calling and belittling you, that is a red flag. Someone who is controlling your finances, all of your whereabouts, who doesn't respect boundaries. These are red flags that we overlook because we tend to think that, oh, well, it'll get better. This is just cute. This is the way they love me. And, it'll change. Well, it won't change.
Right. Right.
It won't. It won't change.
I think
It's worse.
yeah, what you're talking about, and especially when somebody starts dating someone or in a relationship in that honeymoon period, oh, they are really wanting to know where I am. But see, you got to pay attention to the patterns of behavior, right? Is there this interdependence, this freedom, or is it more of that power and control?
Right. And it's so important. Talk to people in your tribe. Like, if you see this in those first 90 days, or it'll start showing, because when you get into a relationship, it doesn't show immediately. Like, no one shows up in a relationship very abusive, very controlling.
Right.
And so I would recommend you tell your friends, hey guy, man, I'm dating this girl, and she seems a little bit jealous, and your friend said, tell me what is that? What do you mean by that? Right. Tell your friends sometimes, because sometimes your friends may be able to say, that sounds a little bit concerning. I can't tell you what you do, but that sounds a little bit concerning. And sometimes you don't want to share, but it's okay to share people that you trust, what you are experiencing, because that can make a difference, right? Yeah. And so it's so important that survivors' experiences are validated. Mm-hmm. That, there are times that you have happy moments in your relationships. Mm-hmm. And don't dismiss that. And it makes it difficult when you want to leave, because you've been told, I'm going to change, or I'm sorry, or, that cycle of abuse. You have the honeymoon phase, and then you start to the tension building phase. I'm walking on eggshells. And then you have that explosive stage, and then you have it again where, had you not done this, I wouldn't have done this. If you don't do this, if you just listen to me, I wouldn't have hit you. I wouldn't have thrown that ball at you, right? So you begin to think, I can change and he'll change. You begin to think it's your fault because that's what they've told you. And you get really caught up in this psychological web. And that is the really hard part of abuse, is that you begin to think everything is your fault.
Yeah.
No matter what. It's like, well, if I could just change, if I'm going to go to that church, okay, things will be fine. Cook Sunday dinner, I'm going to be fine. I don't go out with my girlfriends, things are going to be fine. But the whole time you're on pins and needles.
Yeah.
And it's that cycle. The cycle continues until you decide to break the cycle.
Yeah. And pay attention to the cycle, because after the explosion stage, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Let me go give you this gift. Let's take you on a trip. And all of a sudden you think everything is good. and then all of a sudden you go back on that cycle. Pay attention to the cycle.
That happened to me, and I wrote about it where after an explosive episode, I received a trip to the beach, some flowers, a shopping spree, all that stuff. Like, oh, okay, so maybe that's just a one-time thing, but then it continued.
Mhm.
And that's the part where we're already caught up what we think that is love, and this is just our type of relationship. Because I've had a client to say, Dr. Brown, this is our love language. We call each other names. We throw things at each other. This is what we do.
I don't think that's what Gary Chapman identified as a love language.
Absolutely, absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, Doc, how would you respond to the following? And considering chapter 2 of your book, Black Women's Complexities with Domestic Violence. You know, we have this strong Black woman, right? And sometimes that strong Black woman, it can be a benefit, but it's killing us literally and metaphorically. How would you respond to a woman that says, oh, I'm all right, I'm strong, I can handle this?
Well, that's why I wrote the chapter, right? Because our intersecting identities really impact how we experience abuse. And being strong all the time doesn't mean that we have to endure abuse, because historically that's what mom and them did, right? And so we have to break the cycle. We have to understand that we don't have to be strong to say that I can handle this, I can endure it, and that makes me a stronger Black woman because I'm going to get through this. This is just a season, so I'm going to endure all of this, these trials and tribulations and this chaos right now. I'm going to come out on top. Like, no, like that is just so unhealthy. And so we have to break down what the strong mean, and then we have to really look at ourselves like, is that who I want to show my kids? Is that what I want to show my kids? That I am being strong for the family, and we're going to endure the abuse by their father or by their mother just to say we got through it, or God is trying to teach me something. Like, because I've heard that too. Like, he's trying to teach me, this is a test. Like, really make it make sense. But I've heard that God is trying to test me.
I've heard it as well in sessions as well. And you brought up the kids. How does domestic violence impact the kids?
Wow, it becomes a template for them, how they view relationships. And the first image of a relationship starts at home. And so when survivors are contemplating leaving and going, well, I don't want to break up my family, this is all my kids. No, but the kids already see it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so kids are a reason why survivors stay a little bit longer than they really want to. Mm-hmm. And if they're in therapy, they can begin to see that I want a new life for my kids. And they the shift happens in therapy. That's why therapy and counseling is so important, because that shift happens in the counseling room, and then the shift happens here. So there's the psychoeducation that happens. Right. Then the shift happens here, and then there's the behavior.
Yes.
So it's the
you got to change and reframe how you're thinking so that your behavior changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So they have to be educated on what is domestic violence. Right. That's why I put the power and control wheel in the book, because many people have never seen that.
Yeah.
And so when you begin to look at it and say, I am experiencing everything in this will.
Yeah.
This is power and control. It's like a light bulb that goes off.
Right.
And sometimes you have to sit with that, right, for a while, that as a Black woman, you mean to tell me I'm experiencing abuse? Mm-hmm. I can't, as a strong Black woman, this can't be abuse. And I have seen that because I am a strong Black woman. There is no way that this power and control will, this infographic you are showing me, Dr. Brown, this is my story. Yeah. Is there another name for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been asked that.
We're putting the link of the infographic in the chat box right now, so you can refer to it, but you also get her book, get Dr. Brown's book.
Absolutely.
See it in the book, right?
Right. And I walk you through I provide some exercises for you to examine how your intersecting identities show up when it comes to experiencing abuse, right? And so what that looks like, Dr. Tinsley, is that our multiple identities, race, gender, sexual orientation, religious status, the more identities we have, we're more susceptible to oppression, right?
Yeah.
And multiple experiences of oppression as a result of our multiple identities. And so for Black women survivors, how that impacts us in the legal system. I've had one client, one, in over 15 years of doing this work, that was successful with receiving a protective order, a DV
Mhm.
protective order.
Right.
They were told things such as, why did you go back? It couldn't have been that hard for you. You called, and when an officer got there, you changed your mind. I mean, so that speaks to judges and how they understand domestic violence, right? And
Yeah.
so they don't see emotional scars. It's only like if you come to the courtroom busted up, bruised, or the black eye, that kind of thing. Oh, we're going to grant it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Or
it's
you're not believed, right? Or they don't believe you. Yeah.
yeah.
Or especially
And
black.
the young woman in Minnesota who was just killed had a domestic violence protective order. So how do we get women to understand, are they beneficial? Are they helpful? What are other steps? I think that's really important as part of the education, because if a woman sees on the news, well, she had a protective order and she's no longer here. We have
Right.
to help. We have to collaboratively work. I just talked about this in a presentation, is that we as a community have to come together. Faith communities, clinicians, political communities, law
Yeah.
enforcement, for the protection of men, women, and children.
Absolutely. Thank you for including the entire family. It is a family issue. And so helping survivors understand, I mean, it is known, well known, that a domestic violence protective order, sadly, is a piece of paper. And for a number of reasons and loopholes in the system, sometimes they can't find the abuser, the perpetrator. They can't find them, right?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times it's just that a piece of paper, and then they come right back. They don't care anything about it. And so don't lose hope, but working with, if your county or your state offers a legal advocate, that is helpful as well, having an advocate with you when you're in the dealing with some of the court proceedings and things of that nature. That makes it difficult even when you're filing for divorce. Some people will be like, I just want them to have everything, because they will manipulate the system.
Right.
There's a term called post separation abuse. Many of my clients are experiencing it now. They are divorced, and the ex-husbands are trying to find ways to take them back to court,
Mm,
child support, use
right.
their finances to manipulate the system, to
Right.
find another lawyer because they have the means to do. The question I get, when will this ever end, Dr. Brown? I am divorced. We have a custody agreement. When will this end?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for people that are watching and they're seeing you and you're telling your story,
Mhm.
so continue to have hope and faith, right?
Right. Mhm.
And you wrote in your book, the very last chapter, thriving after abuse. So how do we help people to have hope and faith, to be resilient, and to thrive? What does thriving look like?
Wow. Because the book transformed and changed a lot. I hadn't even thought of healing and thriving. But when I began to tell my story, I was like, okay, well, I am healing and thriving. And thriving really looks like understanding that that's one part of you, that the work is going to include therapy. Now, I'm not saying that because I am a counselor. I'm not saying that, but counseling does work because the trauma that you endure and experience, that it changes your belief system and
Right.
how you view yourself.
Yes.
How
Yes.
you view yourself. Um, I can't even say. That's why there's a chapter called Understanding Domestic Violence Trauma. And I would share as a survivor that after having, spent some time in therapy, I didn't begin trauma work until 6 years ago.
Mm.
Now, here I am as a survivor, and I learned about power and control, but had no idea how the trauma was showing up in my adult life. I wasn't connecting disconnection. I wasn't connecting flashbacks. I wasn't connecting a number of things until the light bulb went off, said, this is how the trauma is showing up for you in your adult life.
Yeah.
And I had to sit with that for a while. I was like, do what? I'm having a flashback. You mean a trigger? I
Right.
mean, something from 25 years ago is why I can't tolerate disrespect. I mean, just like connect the dots.
Yeah.
So thriving looks like connecting the dots and connecting with yourself and
Absolutely.
being so compassionate and practicing self-compassion and knowing that if you get triggered, it's okay. But how do I navigate the triggers? How do
Right.
I articulate my stuff, right? And you
Yeah.
can't articulate until you spend some time with yourself and sit with your own stuff and
Yeah.
being able to work through it. We're gonna always be triggered, but it's
Yeah.
also the beauty is that, looking back and say, I just experienced something and I wasn't triggered as I used to be triggered. Like, thank
Right.
you, Lord, for the glimmer. Like, thank you, God. Like, thank you, God, that what used to take me off from a 0 to 1,000, it's like that didn't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was because of prayer. That because of therapy. That was because of my community. That because of exercise. That because of nutrition.
Yeah.
That was because of sitting with myself and honoring myself and say, girl, you got to do this work. It's going to keep happening.
Yeah. There's a couple things you've said, and I just want to reiterate, because you're a counselor, I'm a counselor. You're a counselor educator, I'm a counselor educator, but I'm also talking to our faith leaders. We are counselors, faith leaders as people, and as our profession and shepherds. We don't separate the two. So even the counselor and faith leaders need a counselor. You just talked about your counseling. I'm in counseling. Even the counselor needs a counselor. Even the faith leader needs a counselor, because that trained professional is going to help you to identify some of those unconscious blind spots that might be happening today in your life.
Right.
So counselors in training, counselors, we know our ethical codes say self-care is not a luxury, it's an ethical mandate. Even the counselor and faith leaders need a counselor.
We do, because we are human.
That's
so
right.
We are not exempt, right? And so we are human. We have grief, and I'm dealing with grief rates now, experiencing 2 losses, but we have grief, we have work, we have our own trauma, right? We have our ethical mandate, but we want to be a better version of ourselves. We have to want to help ourselves, and that means therapy. It's the same way if you break your arm, you're going to go to the doctor, right? And there's going to be an orthopedic surgeon and say, I'm going to refer you to physical therapy. And so I tell my clients, like, you got to do the exercise in physical therapy. You got to do the homework in mental health. Like we treat the emotional wounds. We both use the same blue book, but we're treating the emotional wounds and they're doing the physical wounds. So it's the same thing. And we cannot overlook that part, the emotional side, because that impacts us spiritually, Dr. Tinton. When I say spiritually, like meaning your views about God, like I have survivors who have stopped going to church, didn't trust faith leaders, a lot of church hurt because of stuff they had experienced, right? And so it's so important that, as you just said, that faith leaders and counselors, that we make sure that we do our work, because I want to thrive. And part of thriving is like dealing with the messiness,
Yeah, I want to thrive, and I want to be the best version for you who comes into my counseling office.
Yeah, I want to keep thriving. That doesn't mean I won't have hangups and slip ups, but it means it won't be like I was 25 plus years ago. That's what that means. That era is over. That era is over.
Absolutely. So as we talk to the counselors and faith leaders, it is okay to have your own counseling. But for those who are seeking counseling, there are so many places that you can look for. Both Dr. Brown and I are very involved with NBCC, the National Board for Certified Counselors, nbcc.org. We have a counselor find webpage where you can look up counselors. You can reach out to either one of us. Dr. Shanita has her Facebook page. If you want to reach out, confidentiality, and just ask for somebody that's in your state. But we also have Psychology Today, and you can start looking for someone. And ask the counselors about their own level of self-awareness and their level of self-care, because that's going to be important for the work that they help you with as well.
I would say therapy for Black girls as well, if you want a Black woman therapist. But I discuss in my book that my very first trauma therapist was a white Christian therapist. And it's so important to understand that in this world that we do not, our race isn't a dominant race. So you're not going to have this like 50,000 plus Black therapists. Be okay with seeing a counselor who doesn't look like you, right? And I stress that importance, because that was the catalyst for me. And she prayed before our sessions, and she prayed before we did EMDR reprocessing sessions. And that was I waited 4 months to see her because I prayed. I said, okay, God, you are showing me myself now. And so I got to clean this up and help me find someone. It was a 4-month wait, and I waited. And so I encourage you all that, hey, Dr. Brown is saying, there's therapy for Black girls, but if you don't find someone who has experience in DV that looks like you, being okay with seeing a therapist who doesn't look like you.
And I appreciate that, because first of all, a whole nother session we can have about the number of counselors of color in our profession. We only represent 10 to 13% across counseling, psychology, social work, and marriage and family therapists. Here's the thing that I will reiterate that Dr. Brown just said. There may not be a perfect match by race and gender. What you also are looking for, are they qualified for your presenting issue of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, depression? So there are many different resources for that.
Right, absolutely. And ask them questions. That's Dr. Tinsley shared, asking them questions. Ask them questions. What do they understand about Black women and domestic violence? You have to interview us as you would do any other provider.
Absolutely.
This is your journey, it's your healing. You have to prioritize it. So ask the questions.
Yeah. So we're coming to an end. So a couple more questions. Looking forward, what changes do you hope to see in the way society addresses domestic violence, particularly in marginalized communities?
More resources. That's why I wrote my book, Black Women Need More Resources. And I changed that from the beginning when I thought of all survivors of all ethnicities, because Black women, there aren't enough resources. I wish that more agencies, there was more funding for agencies. When you think about funding for agencies who serve the Black and Brown community, we think on the federal level and how that is disseminated. We want agencies to have more money to be able to help the populations that are mostly impacted by oppression and violence, and that's survivors who look like you and me. And so I would also love to see changes in our legal system, right? And how Black and Brown people are treated, especially survivors are treated in our legal system. When the things of advocates or attorneys or just the entire process. That is another reason why survivors say, I don't know if I want to go to court because my family member was treated this way. They weren't believed. So that creates another stressor for me, Dr. Brown. Is there another way I can do this beyond having to file a protective order or talk to an advocate? Those experiences, they are real and they matter. Yes. And so I hope that, if I could see a world that all women and girls were treated equally and all boys and men were believed to support. And I had to include and engage, mention our Black brothers, that we need you in this work to end violence against all women and girls. We cannot do it alone. It's so important that you start at an early age. The influence that you have, if you don't have a son, a nephew, or be okay with telling someone that if she doesn't want to be in a relationship, be okay with that. Like, why can't you accept that response? Like, she is not property. And so it takes all of us, collectively chipping away at all of this when it comes to violence against women and girls. And we need our brothers to do that. We need faith leaders, but we need our brothers as well.
Yes, we need our brothers, and every brother has a sister, a daughter, an aunt, a mother. And so you have some relationship with women. And so get this book for yourself, but also share it with other people.
Yes, absolutely. It's for everyone.
Yeah. So you mentioned this for our brothers, but what tips and suggestions, as we come to a closing, what tips and suggestions do you have specifically for faith leaders, pastors, preachers, ministers, as it relates to this topic? What is your hope? What are your tips and suggestions?
Well, I can't give all of that away, but I would say, one, get the book, because I provide some tips and suggestions, and I also provide a resource for pastors. But look within and ask yourself the question, what am I doing for Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
Yeah.
That's the first start.
Yeah.
Right? I have the power and influence to say, perhaps we have a Purple Sunday. I would just drop that gem. If you
Yeah.
don't offer Purple Sunday in your church,
Right.
you have the power
Yeah.
and agency to say, let's take one Sunday
Mhm.
for domestic violence awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Purple Sunday means everybody wears purple, just as you do for breast cancer.
Yeah.
You raise awareness.
Yeah.
Number two, I'll give one more as a bonus.
Yeah.
Connect with inbox me. I do trainings. I do virtual trainings. Connect, find ways to train your leaders. During the pandemic, people were trapped in homes. They were calling for churches who transitioned to virtual church. People were calling the prayer line. I'm in an abusive family. Faith leaders didn't know what to do. Prayer workers, they didn't know what to do besides say, let me pray with you. So think of how prepared are my leaders to work with families. Families, it is not an individual issue. Families impacted by abuse. How prepared are my leaders prepared when somebody reports sexual abuse?
Yep. And I would say, talk about this from the pulpit, just like we talk about mental health from the pulpit, just like we talk about social injustices from the pulpit. Talk about this from the pulpit. As you think about your ministries being trauma informed and healing centered, how can you weave this topic into your Bible studies, your small group discussions, right?
Book talk for a support group, women's group, all of that.
Yeah. So I think starting the conversation, just like we're having it here tonight, take the same conversation and have it with members in your church community, your faith-based community as well. Yeah. It's good. So as we come to a close, is there anything else you would like the listening audience to know that they may not have, that you have not shared this evening?
I want to say to all the listeners who are survivors, who may still be in this relationship, that I see you, that I am with you, that you are not alone, and that God is with you as well. Don't lose hope and don't lose faith. This particular topic could be the start of a new life for you. And so don't lose your faith, don't lose hope, and that there's help available. There's help available.
That's right. So how can people get your book, Dr. Brown?
My book is available on Amazon. You can also find it on my website. There's a link, www.drshanitaBrown.com. There's a link that says Healing in 5, and they can also purchase that way. And buy for someone else, because some people say, well, I'm not a survivor, or buy for someone else. 1 in 3 are experiencing domestic violence right now. You know somebody who is a survivor. It's a great time. It's a great Christmas present. Feel free to start now.
Absolutely. And then how could they get in touch with you if they wanted to invite you to come speak at their church or ministry meeting?
Yes. Again, on my website, you can just send me a message. My email is info@drshanitaBrown.com. If any churches are interested in bulk orders, just shoot me an email and we can discuss that. I do offer virtual fireside chats, and I'm doing one later this month for an organization. And so we're able to talk about the book. And so we just want people to be informed. We want people healed, and we want people to thrive. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you are. I'm just so honored to have you. I'm so happy to help you with your book. Congratulations.
I could not have done this without your support and guidance. So thank you so much. I am truly grateful for my village. You're part of my tribe. Yeah. So thank you so much. Love you dearly, sis.
Love you too. Love you. So as we conclude tonight's show, I want to express my hope that our discussion has shed light on the unique challenges faced by Black women survivors of domestic violence and the crucial role the faith and community support play in their healing journeys. I encourage everyone to take these insights to heart and foster conversations within your own communities about how we can collectively uplift and empower survivors. Together, we can create a more supportive environment that not only recognizes their struggles, but also celebrates their resilience and strength. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to continuing this important dialogue in the future. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please join me next month in November. I have Dr. Brian Jones. He's a licensed professional counselor, ordained minister.
Yeah.
He's a CPE educator and supervisor and chief chaplain, supervisory chaplain at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. Thank you all for joining us tonight. God bless.
Good night. Bye.